Look, Bitcoin. I'm Rangadad. This is not financial advice. This is just the way I'm looking at the market. And yeah, kind of worst case scenario with the war between Iran and um, Israel sort of kicking off. But, you know, the charts were kind of leaning that way. Um, the saying goes that you show me the charts and I'll tell you the news. And yeah, there was certainly downside happening already, at least on Bitcoin, not necessarily on the regular stock market. But anyway, uh, stochastic momentum. I mean, this is heading down fast. I think we found a little bottom here for at least a few hours, maybe 8 hours or so. Just have to wait and see. But the reason why I think we've found a bottom here, and I'll jump straight into liquidation heat map. Basically, if we do drop further than that, I think pretty quickly we're going to end up at 57k. But there's bugger all in between. All right. If you look at CoinAnk, there is a few orders just below here, so we could sweep this low. So I'm thinking sort of bounce up, come back down, sweep it, and then move away. But there has been some open interest increasing on the way down here as well. There was a little bit of a flush out there, that last sort of move down in the last hour or so, which is typically not a bad thing. I mean, this does seem like it's a pretty good bottom signal. If we compare it to all the other bottoms we've had, like previously, this chart kind of updates relative. So previously there was quite a red segment in here. I think if I control zoom on that, as you can see there, so it's relative to what else you're seeing on your screen. But yeah, if we zoom back out, obviously that was a pretty good low there. It looks like we're forming a pretty good low here. Does that mean we can not go further below that? Not really. It just means I think for the time being we might get a bit more of a bounce. I have closed out all my shorts, I believe, and I'll see how it plays out as to whether I open more. I do still have a long that's quite heavily underwater at the moment, but I think average buy price was that. I added to it right in that bottom of that candle there. But yeah, the average buy price I think is still like around 63k, so I'm up in here. Good news is I've been making money all the way down, so if we do hit that point, I'll be up a little bit. If not, I'll obviously be looking to get back into longs if I think it's going to go further, but I'll definitely be holding those longs for, the shorts. I'll definitely be holding those shorts for a lot longer. Just sit back and wait for like a proper longer term turnaround. Because yeah, I think if we do break this level, there's a lot of stuff around here. Then not necessarily this level. Sorry, I'll show you the proper level would be the daily 200 EMA. If we break that, I think, which isn't far away from here, which makes me think we could sweep this, but essentially, yeah, I think we're pretty close to a local bottom on this. Should be a pretty decent bounce. There's a lot of vector candles in here that would be targets. There's a lot of liquidation above now. Wasn't so much previously, so like that is a huge amount of short liquidations if they want to take that. Doesn't look massive on this screen here, but you know, it's nearly $1 billion worth at 63,450. So that has actually dropped off. That's interesting. Could just be, there is a weird thing that goes on with this. The last pixel on the right, it like halves the liquidation levels for some reason. But yeah, I think it's about $1 billion worth at that level. So come into the 48-hour. Doesn't look like it's taking much here, but obviously that's where you have to zoom out because you need, on this particular chart, you need to know, you need to have action on the way up to know where the levels are. Whereas if we do go to this one, gives you a bit better idea as well. Just, I mean, you look at this, why would it bother trying to bridge the gap to start taking some of the stuff that's down around the 57 mark? And even on this graph, it doesn't show up as much as what's on the other liquidation heat map. So look at this stage, it looks like we've bottomed. We could sweep down to that 60K mark just to tidy this up, but man, that'd have to be a pretty good level, you would think. Yeah, lots. You don't often see it this heavily weighted to one side. Lots of people got liquidated recently. And as you can see, lots of buyers coming in on the way down and not much below. So interesting chart. Hence, yeah, pretty comfortable closing my longs. Sorry, closing the shorts at this stage. We do have a bit of a wick on the 1 hour as well, which it may want to come back and just pick up a bit of the liquidity that's in there. So just be careful of the downside. It looks like it's trying to do that at the moment. I might just a quick short there, just to pick that up. So yeah, that's pretty well a quick summary of the short term for Bitcoin. Long term for Bitcoin, as I said, I think the 200 EMA will be an interesting one. This happened so quickly. Obviously, we got the value area low here as well. That's at 60,400. It's kind of bounced off that. It didn't close like a 15-minute below that, I don't think. So look, this mid band here is probably a target as well. So even wicks down into that 58, which brings you into pretty well into the 57. Look, at this stage with momentum heading down as sharp as it is, and BBWP's just taken a little bounce here too, thanks to the speed of this and the volume in this candle. And that is big volume, but similar candles of similar sort of volume tend to be stopping on the way down. But it's a tough one with the war and stuff. I think we could potentially see another big day of selling. Just something to be watching on the shorter time frames. If you're day trading it, obviously you would be anyway. But hard to call a proper turnaround here. The only thing is whether it wants to keep going and get extra liquidity. I don't see why it would, but you know, two big vector candles here to recover. I wouldn't call either of these. Well, obviously this red one's not recovered at all, but even the pink one hasn't been recovered yet. So they are going to be magnets for price up here. And on the shorter time frames, obviously this here is a vector candle. Yeah, look, momentum's still to the downside on the hourly as well. Potentially going to get another couple of hours of down, but it might only be sort of smallish candles. Have to wait and see. I think the majority of the volumes probably come through in this large chunk here. Hard to tell at this stage. It just kind of looks and feels like it might have found its bottom. Interestingly, we are between the 618 and the 786 on this pullback. So that's pretty deep. Like if you start to close below that 59, then you would think it's a new trend. That's typically the way fibs would be used anyway, but I don't know. Fibs can be handy for me for looking for bounces, just as a confluence. I don't necessarily trade fibs by themselves. Fibbo Swanee, I think. He's probably one to follow if you're into fibs. He does some pretty cool stuff with fibs and RSI. But yeah, anyway, as a little aside, everything seems pretty, well, getting close to being overextended. We could potentially chop around here for a little bit as well, particularly on the 15-minute and the 1 hour time frames, just to find a proper base. I'd like to see this stochastic momentum sort of cross over that bearish control zone and then break back. This is like the medium time frame, so this would be a 4 hour time frame, this orange one here. If that breaks back out of the bearish control zone, then it's pretty well confirmed that it's a turnaround. Just as here, like even though the short-term stochastic was sort of in that bearish control zone, this coming down and breaking that control zone kind of is another sort of confluence for me for being a bit more bearish through this region. At the time, that was really close to break even on the long, and I was considering closing that. I did close part of it just because I added to it here, so I'd still made some money out of those. But you know, hindsight's a wonderful thing. Should have listened to my gut there, but still managing the trade pretty well. I got a fair bit of buffer on that. So yeah, you know, expanding Bollinger Bands, but they are expanding quite quickly. It's hard to call a turnaround when you've got that sort of expansion happening. I'm just going over to this one here. This is 5 minute. So looks like the 5 minute is going to close. I shouldn't have taken that little short. Close that out in a minute. Actually, I might wait for it to just come back into this area. It's just a little bit of downside protection, just in case. But closing back within this Bollinger Band here, I've got a turnaround on most of these. These are all kind of momentum indicators. This one is a Traders Dynamic Index, it's called, but it's basically a Bollinger Band around an RSI. So it's actually really handy in getting trends and things like that. And I've added a few things to it. I've smoothed it out. So yeah, I'm finding this reasonably useful. I'm still trying to figure out a bot around this. I think there is one there somewhere. I just got to get the rules right for it. Yeah, so looks like 5-minute stochastic is potentially going to break out of this bearish control zone. The longer term, which is a 15-minute, has already done that, but it is heading back down towards it. So you're kind of looking for the 15-minute to turn around at the same time. What's that? That's a 1 hour. Is that a 1 hour? Yeah, it is. Yeah. So the red one here is a 1 hour. I think it might even turn around early. But yeah, I don't think this isn't going to be a quick bounce. I think there's a lot of exhaustion in the market. There's a lot of fear in the market at this stage, so it'll be a grind. If we do get a decent one. So yeah, just be cautious until you get stochastic momentums on sort of the 1 hour, 15-minute and the 1 hour sort of turning around. There could still be sort of more short-term downside. All right, I think that summarizes what I'm thinking about Bitcoin for the time being. Obviously, we broke through this 50 EMA here as well, and I think that green one's a 100 EMA. So that's probably a good target for a bounce, which is up around the 61,400 level. 61,500 is probably a good target. They seem to like, on the way down, the 500 levels have been sort of bounce levels, or at least on the shorter time frames. But yeah, I think that for a pullback, I'd actually be surprised if it stops there. I'd probably more like to see it come up into the 20 EMA on the daily, which is probably going to be around the 62K mark. All right. And then we'll see where we go from there. But this is, if it does, I would consider this a higher low still if it does turn around here. But, we could be in for some of this sort of action too. So it's going to be pretty critical. See what happens with the news and stuff. Which I don't like saying that, but it does seem that the market is getting moved a little bit by news. So NASDAQ had a down day finally. Looks like it's about to break out of that bullish control zone. BBWP is still coming down. I'd expect if we have another down day, that'll probably start to tick up. So yeah, I think NASDAQ 19,100 is a pretty good target. But I think it would probably recover most of this here too. So over the next week or so, potentially into this 200 EMA, which is around 18. It's probably going to be around 18,500 level. Did I put a box on this somewhere? Yeah, I mean that would be a good level too. So about 19,000. I'd certainly be thinking there would be a bounce if we got into this sort of region here. It's going to be somewhere in there, I think. I'll just see if I had any other. Red vector candle too. Seeing them at the highs isn't a bad thing. if it recovers this like it did here, then it could be a bigger pullback. It tends to recover them pretty well on the NASDAQ though. So don't be surprised if we get a little bit of upside tomorrow, but I wouldn't expect it to clear the top of this candle by any means. S&P 500, same sort of deal, red vector candle, same sort of thing. I mean, S&P 500 can make higher closes, or at least higher opens before it actually pulls back, but at this stage it looks like it's going to pull back. This one I'm not expecting as deep a pullback, so somewhere in this region here, I think. Let's see how that plays out. Equal weight hasn't pulled back that much, hey? This could be a trudge down over the next couple of weeks, but we'll see what happens. Yeah, looks like BBWP might be resetting before we actually break out of the bullish control zone on the RSP. So that in itself is suggesting we could actually go a bit lower. That'd be, the market would be freaking out a little bit if that's the case, I would think. I'm just gonna, this here is actually another level. That would be obviously breaking below that 200 EMA. Typically that's not a great thing for the S&P 500. One, it's a decent drop from here. I mean, 10% correction before an election, not unheard of. Honestly, I thought we'd be running up into the election though. So I guess you got to, history's one thing, but you got to watch the charts, and what the charts say goes. But yeah, could get something like this. That will be particularly interesting time for the markets, because everyone will be freaking out saying this is the end, and it might be. You know, there's definitely some stuff that's not healthy under the hood, and I wouldn't even be surprised if the US were involved in escalating things in the Middle East just to help with elections and economic situations. So potentially going to have something like this. Could even keep going below that. Like if we roll over into a recession, that would be sort of start of 2025, which has been, I've actually expanded that out. I've moved that out over the last month or so. I'm not as confident that we're going to see a recession or a big, like the top of the market in late 2024, early 2025. But we'll have to wait and see. I think typically the stock market does sell off if there is a war coming, and then you buy the invasion. So that could well happen. This could just be a pullback and we move up. Let's see how it plays out. But at this stage, it looks like the downside is playing out. It doesn't look like we'll get a pullback in time. We are actually going to get a price pullback. So IWM, I don't think the 20 is going to hold it up here with everything else coming down. XLI, so industrials are moving up, which is interesting. If war's coming, then I guess industrials might get a bit of a boost. XLY, XLP has actually not dropped that much. So That's interesting. That might not have refreshed yet too, maybe. So regional banking has hit our trend line. Don't know that this is going to hold up, but kind of if you're bearish on this and probably bearish on the economy, you want to see this do something like that. If it clears this level here after retesting that trend line, one, it's going to look a bit like a head and shoulders. So it might actually pull back up into this area here. In which case, that is probably going to be, let's call it, it's probably going to come back down into that level there. So 48. Yeah, maybe even bottom of this. So that would kind of make sense. That's right in the middle of this range here. Needs to bounce pretty soon, I would say. ITB is still going up a bit. We got, it's a bit of a shit show, the overall market at the moment. Can't make up its mind. DJI Gold is still coming back a little bit. I think gold got a bit of a pump. Yeah, gold got a 1% pump last night. So last night my time. But at the same time, DJI, I think, actually went up. I don't think I have it on here. Oh, no, pull back a little bit. There are some defensives in DJI, so it may hold up against gold, but it's kind of pointing to if we do break below this, then the stock market will pull back more. Generally, it's a pretty good chance of it anyway. So the skew actually bounced up a little bit, but it took ages for this skew crush to actually play out, and it is probably going to. Well, it's signaling that we'll probably have more of a pullback in the S&P, but a little bounce there is an interesting one. I think it's going to be pretty choppy over the next couple of weeks. It doesn't look like it's going to be a clean pullback anyway. DAX. DAX is pulling back as well. China still hasn't hit the target to the upside. Just a matter of just being a bit careful, I think. Tuesday must have been a public holiday over there, so it wasn't being traded. Keep that in mind for today. That's interesting. Yeah. That index. So yeah, Monday was the last one. UK 100 is flat. Japan is kind of flat, but hasn't hit that 200 that I thought it might. TLT having a little bounce. High yield, that's interesting. That's come back quite a bit. So suggesting that the bonds guys aren't a big fan of what's going on. kind of suggesting that this is the start of the pullback, a proper pullback. Copper's had a little bounce, still waiting for it to come back into here. Uranium's up a little. Yeah, gold, I think it's just a recovery of the vectors there. It doesn't really, I wouldn't call that a strong bounce anyway. What's the news we got? Job openings have actually increased, so that's interesting. Manufacturing PMI was lower than forecast, so that's not great. Silver's bounced a little as well. These things are still trending up, hard to short, but I think gold is probably going to pull back a bit more. Let's have a look what oil's doing. Oh yeah, war. Yeah. So oil tends to like threats of war or escalations of war. Could be finding a bottom here. This would be, if this plays out as a gigantic W pattern, then that will be interesting. Would be a good bottoming pattern, but it's hard to tell. Like, oil could chop around quite a bit here. Momentum hasn't crossed back above the signal line yet, but that's a pretty sharp turnaround. Dixie, whoops, Dixie's bounced a little. Probably on weakness of the euro, I suspect. Yeah. Aussie dollars pulled back a little bit. One thing, what's iron ore? Iron ore spot, there we go. Iron ore jumped massively on Monday. I don't know why it wasn't trading today. Could be the Chinese public holiday, maybe. Anyway, jumped basically on the news of the stimulus in China. I think war would probably help iron ore as well. Tend to need a lot of steel in wartime. I really hope we don't go into an all-out war, but it looks like someone's trying to push it that way. And that would suggest the Aussie dollar is probably going to hold up reasonably well against the other majors. Potentially pullbacks into 67.5 and stuff, but I would expect another leg up on this, to be honest, after a pullback. So global liquidity has remained quite high. There was a big spike, and I think that's the Chinese stimulus that's pushing that. Yeah, still haven't got a read on these yet, or another read. Annoying. Percentage of stocks above the 50-day moving average is coming down, so I'd expect this to keep dropping. Time to start looking to get back in is probably when this gets around the 35. If you see turnarounds before that, then happy days. Stochastic momentum is probably going to be a pretty good read on this as well. Mag 7 flat, really. I think, yeah, Tesla's pulled back a little bit. Nvidia's pulled back quite a chunk. ARK. Okay. Sorry about ARK. Decent amount of support on Tesla there too. Red vector candle. Typically, they're not great when you're at the highs, but could have found its top. It might just go sideways around here until the news event on the 10th for Robotaxi. Apple, false breakout here on Apple. Didn't clear. Oh, God, excuse me. Didn't clear the wick on this vector candle here by the look of that. It's that high 233.09, 233.00. There was a B stick in it, but didn't clear it and rejected off that. So Apple's probably going to just play out this wedge here that seems to be forming. Well, it's already formed. We break below this, then that's potentially not a great sign as well. You'd be looking realistically, if we break below that, somewhere in around this 200, somewhere around that level, you're probably going to get a decent bounce. But whether you actually break out above this, we'll have to wait and see. It's now probably heading more towards a horizontal trend line, actually, resistance line. So that's something to keep in mind if you're trading Apple. Yeah, it looks like things are ready to break down anyway. Triple M still finding a bit of support. I think Triple M would actually probably do well in wartime as well. A lot of their products are related to manufacturing and would be used in those sort of military applications. Amazon looks like it wants to come back into this vector candle here. There's a fair bit below here that it could come into. Meta has broken out of that channel, so yeah, be expecting a retest of the top of this at some stage. Might be a good buying opportunity for Meta. It's certainly liked at the moment, though. I think they upgraded their forward guidance, so that would tend to do it, especially in this environment. People are looking for winners. Airbnb is pulling back. MCI. ASX 200 needs to find some support here, but it did hit our target. That was a quite a long-term target there of about 8,200. Could be a false break out of it. And it does look like it's set to roll over. So, total crypto market cap. Looks like there's a fair chunk of liquidity coming out. Interesting that we're closing below the 200 or all the EMAs there. And stochastic momentum is still down. So this could get back down to at least these levels, somewhere around the 1.97 mark. Somewhere in here, maybe. Be looking for bounces around there anyway. That would probably signify that the market will overall be recovering, which, I mean, that that could suggest that, yeah, Bitcoin's got a bit further to go to the downside yet. Ethereum got smashed. This will be an interesting level for it, as we mentioned. But I think if Bitcoin keeps going, this will probably get back into the 2,300 mark. I mean, even just by itself, the stochastic momentum's quite coming down quite quickly. Just have a quick look where the CME is on Bitcoin. The CME is still sitting, even after today. When does CME close? Just have a quick look. So it closes at 7 o'clock my time, which is basically when I started this stream. Oh shit! Still got this niggling freaking cough. I'm kind of surprised that it didn't close lower than that, which again is kind of a good sign that Bitcoin may find a bottom here. If CME didn't come down with it, like you look, the low on CME was 64.50, about 20 minutes to 7. We just go in here, 20 minutes to 7. Low on bybit was 60,120. I would have thought, if there was more intent to go lower, CME would have closed a bit lower than what it did. So yeah, that's something to keep in mind as well. It closed around the level that Bitcoin is at the moment. Did we have much of a gap down today? Interesting. Let's have a look on the daily. Didn't actually gap down, actually gapped up. Well, wouldn't really call it a gap up on the daily, but that is interesting. So yeah, we could come back down to the bottom again, like around that 60,000 mark during the day today. But in general, I think we may have a positive day today. I don't think it's going to be a huge day, as I said before. I think there's a lot of fatigue. A lot of people got smashed, and generally it'll take a while to recover from that. Okay, there's not a lot of long liquidations coming into the charts there. But open interest is ticking up. That's a pretty good bottoming signal around here. So yeah, short term, I'm generally upside biased at the moment, and yeah, see how we go after that. Oh, actually, a target on this to the upside. I think that there would seem like a pretty good target to the upside, 63,296, which I'll be happy if it does get to that. Put along back into profit, and overall would be a pretty good couple of weeks of trading. Yeah, not much between here and there though, so I think she's going to be a slow one, and potentially just a sweep of these lows before we get there. All right, I think that'll do. Unless I'm guessing that's probably you, Joshua, that's viewing. If you have any questions, let me know, and I'll try and cover them in the next couple of days. But yeah, generally things aren't looking great on the dailies. We've finally rolled over. Pepe is following Bitcoin. LTC following Bitcoin for a change. Yeah, I reckon LTC could retest these lows at 56, I'd say. Although if Bitcoin turns around here, it'll obviously turn around as well. LTC's got a freaking gigantic wick down here, around 49. That'd be an interesting target if Bitcoin does keep going lower. Looks like 200 EMA for if LTC is going to really continue up and go big time to the upside, it needs to clear that 200 EMA with confirmation, I would say. All right, that'll do me for today. I'll catch you later.